Thank you very much for attending our press conference today. With me are many of our clients, each of whom is going to make a statement. And we also have a video from one of our clients, which we will also play. In addition, we have our co-counsel, and they will be introduced shortly. And our co-counsel, Lanier, will be making a statement, and the rest of her team will also be answering questions, and we will be taking your questions at the conclusion of our statements. So I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and now we will begin. Today we're here to discuss 7 lawsuits that we have filed on behalf of former students of the University of North Carolina School of the Arts related to allegations of childhood sexual abuse and exploitation that each has suffered while a minor attending that school. These victims can seek justice because of the compassion and the understanding of the North Carolina General Assembly in passing the Safe Child Act. In November 2019, Governor Cooper signed the Safe Child Act into law after this historic piece of legislation, perhaps the most important victims' rights legislation in decades, was approved by a bipartisan unanimous vote in both the North Carolina Senate and House. This unanimous bipartisan vote came at a time when North Carolina was sharply divided by partisan politics. Despite those divisions, every legislator rallied behind the Safe Child Act. One of the many important things that the bill did was to give victims who were sexually abused as children in North Carolina, whose claims were time barred by the expiration of the statute of limitations, a window called a clawback window in which their claims have been revived. That window closes on December 31st, 2021, this year. This means that victims have until this year to file their claims that were previously barred by the running of the statute of limitations. It is important to us and to our clients that victims, especially victims of the North Carolina University School of the Arts, know of this deadline. We are also here today in hopes that when the public becomes fully aware of these claims, that witnesses will come forward to support the allegations made by the alleged victims that we represent. Last week, we filed in the Industrial Commission lawsuits on behalf of 7 victims, alleging that for at least 2 decades, the administrators at UNCSA knew of the culture of sexual abuse and exploitation of children under their care and supervision, but did nothing to stop that egregious conduct. Those claims are filed under the North Carolina Tort Claims Act. We also filed in Forsyth County Superior Court a lawsuit on behalf of our clients against both the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, UNCSA, and individually against 7 former UNCSA administrators and 1 former teacher at the school. The claims against the administrators seek to hold them personally responsible for knowing about the widespread sexual abuse of students at the school and yet failing to take any steps to protect our clients and others. The claims against UNCSA in that case are based on allegations that UNCSA violated the North Carolina Constitution in permitting and condoning the widely known sexual abuse of students. This lawsuit is filed as a class action and brings these claims not only on behalf of all other current and former students who may have been victims of sexual abuse. The allegations in these lawsuits are both serious and troubling. For example, we allege the following. The complaint alleges the students were groped, fondled, and touched in a sexual manner, and the students were constantly subjected to grossly sexual comments. The complaint further alleges that sexual abuse and exploitation inflicted upon minor students at the school was not only known by students, faculty, staff, and administrators at the school, but sadly was known among many of the members of the dance community nationwide. The complaint further alleges that the culture of condoning sexual abuse was not limited to the dance department, but also occurred in the drama and film departments, and that the university ignored and/or condoned it. Some graduate students in the film school were also involved in the abuse. The complaint further alleges that sexual relationships between faculty members and high school age students were widely known by UNCSA administrators who ignored and/or condoned such sexual exploitation. We contend in the lawsuit the defendant UNCSA knew or should have known of the repeated and ongoing sexual abuse and exploitation of UNCSA's students, and despite this knowledge, acted with deliberate indifference and failed to report, intervene, investigate, discipline, pursue criminal charges, stop the abuse and exploitation, or otherwise take any action to protect the plaintiffs and other students at UNCSA. Our clients, who allege in this lawsuit that they are victims, are very brave. They look forward to testifying in court and having the truth come out regarding what happened to them when they were young, middle, and high school age students at UNCSA. All they want is justice, and for everyone to know that students have access to justice to assert and vindicate their rights, thanks to the Safe Child Act. This act was signed into law for the protection of victims who were minors in North Carolina when their rights were violated, and gave all such victims of childhood sexual abuse, no matter their current age, 2 years to seek justice against their abusers and their enablers, a chance at justice that they thought was long gone. But this provision of the act expires on December 31st, 2021. That means that adults who allege they were a victim of sexual abuse as a child must file their lawsuit in North Carolina no later than December 31st, 2021, if they want access to justice. Thanks to the Safe Child Act, there can be finally justice for these victims. We urge anyone who has information that may be helpful in our investigation to contact us. Thank you. And now we are going to call on the victim to tell what they feel comfortable sharing today. And so I am going to call on first Mary, and we ask that only their first names be used in reporting. So Mary, please begin.
My name is Mary Sloan Gilmour. I was a student at UNCSA beginning at the age of 12 and until graduating high school in 1988. During that time, I suffered sexual abuse that truly set me up for a pattern of being taken advantage of by others later in life. A sense of powerlessness was established in me as a result of the sexual abuse during those childhood years that made me feel like less of a person than everyone else. I can honestly say that this damage has deeply and negatively impacted every relationship and every job I've ever had. This should not have happened to me or any other child at UNCSA. It was wrong, and it must never happen again.
Thank you very much, Mary. And now I would like to call on Elizabeth.
My name is Elizabeth Johnson, and I attended UNCSA from 1984 to 1987. At 15 years old, I left a supportive, loving, intact family to pursue dreams of training to be a professional dance artist, a dream since beginning classes at age 4. Accepted to an institution that held itself out as one of the most respected professional art schools in the US, after a highly competitive national audition, I was initially thrilled to be there. However, after being moved to the top level high school class, I was immersed in a world of sexual abuse and such confusing physical pain and psychological darkness that I began to experience anxious dread as an everyday normal. As an underaged adolescent, I was subjected to sexual abuse that was normalized by my instructors as preparation for the future professional career I wanted so much. In weekly classes, my body was often violated by teachers who had well-known reputations for being sexual predators, both within the school and in the greater dance community. This abuse was perpetrated through sexualized touching, explicitly pornographic language used to describe body parts, and me and my classmates being advised how to behave in sexually gratuitous ways. I was also forced to witness the frequent violations of my classmates. As masterful manipulators and abusers, some of my dance instructors gaslit me into believing that these violations were necessary for my own good. To question or resist abuse resulted in public humiliation that silenced and shamed. There was always a fear of not being invited back to the program the next year if I failed to comply. I remain staggered by the chronic negative impacts and damage those 3 traumatic years caused in the whole of my personal and professional life. I was groomed to accept sexual abuse as a daily fact of life and something I deserved. After leaving UNCSA at 18 years old, still so young, I wanted no part of an identity that was rooted in being a broken body and soul. And by age 22 was seeking therapeutic intervention for my ongoing post-traumatic stress. Never feeling worthy of even my own self-respect, my life spiraled as a result of the intense and systematic sexual abuse by my teachers.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now, Terrence.
My name is Terrence Steiner. I was involved with North Carolina School of the Arts from 1983 to 1988. While at the School of the Arts, I was groomed starting at the age of 12 and ultimately sexually abused. This case is very important because we must ensure this has stopped and that no child should suffer under this weight. I endured years of sexual abuse by my teachers. The impact on my life has been devastating. I attempted suicide 2 times. I hope that by speaking out, we can be sure this never happens again. I am so grateful to other victims who are coming forward and the many faculty and staff members who are coming forward and telling the truth to help right this terrible wrong.
Thank you, Terrence. And now, Elizabeth. Another Elizabeth.
My name is Elizabeth Wilson. I attended UNCSA from 1985 to 1988. I'd come from a small town studio full of excitement to have been accepted into the modern dance program. I believed that attending NCSA was the most amazing opportunity to receive elite level training and to pursue a professional dance career. When I entered the program at the age of 14, I was immersed in an environment of sexual abuse and related intimidation and control. I was sexually abused by my teachers on a daily basis. My instructors regularly touched me in sexually provocative ways under the guise of correcting my technique. The overall atmosphere of sexual abuse and related shame and humiliation was pervasive. I believed, as did my peers, that this treatment was normal since we all witnessed it, as did our other instructors, and no one ever questioned or challenged the way we were treated. The sexual abuse I endured and witnessed caused decades of pain. I struggled with depression and lack of self-worth because of the abuse. Within 2 years of leaving UNCSA, I suffered with trauma-related chronic illness spanning 3 decades. Eventually, my health issues became so severe that I could no longer drive a car or even work medication to this day. I have been unable to maintain consistent work. I'm easily triggered and find myself overwhelmed by the years of abuse I endured at UNCSA. The administration ignored their duty to protect students and instead condoned and contributed to a culture of systematic abuse that caused trauma to countless young people. I'm coming forward today for myself, my peers, and for generations of UNCSA students who were abused and deserve justice.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now we have a video by one of our clients, Christopher, who could not be with us today. So we'd like to share that video.
My name is Christopher Aloise Ramsey. I attended high school at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, graduating in 1986. My mentor and abuser began grooming me at 16 years old, both in the classroom and privately. When my peers were dating and planning for university, I was being sexually abused by my teacher. In addition to the trauma caused by the abuse, I was also robbed of these normal life experiences that my peers enjoyed. I did not go and look for universities my senior year. I did not date, and I didn't do things on weekends with friends. Instead, my life experiences were trauma and distress as I rationalized the coerced sex. Convinced I had caused it and began blaming myself, which went on for decades. I began to rationalize that young man in the pictures, that young man had somehow seduced an authority figure and a teacher within the school. The daily atmosphere at our school was one of emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse from some faculty and administrators in the various departments across the college. The sexualization within the dance classes was so pervasive that we, the students, didn't question that anything was wrong. Likewise, we didn't dare question the motives of our mentors that we idolized and were convinced that they, and only they, could give us the ability to have professional careers. They leveraged this against us. Every day we were told they controlled our futures. When, during the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, teachers would say to us, "You must get laid to become real artists," we were 14 to 18 years old, and we believed them. Unfortunately, many of our classmates died before the age of 30 of HIV and AIDS. Some were much younger. So when teachers would hit us, or fondle us, or grope us, or insert fingers in our private parts during class, we wrongly believed these were legitimate tactile corrections. My ability to compartmentalize difficult things has been a way of coping over the years, and I struggle still to face down the demons of the level of abuse that I've suffered. The emotional stress of ignoring the sexual abuse from a mentor at UNCSA has had profound repercussions throughout my life. The psychological damage and the trauma caused by many faculty and administrators at the school are insidious. I watched this happen to many of my fellow classmates too. The harm has been lifelong to many of us. Over the years, I've been on antidepressants since the early 1990s, a litany of sleep medications since I was 17, long-term self-destructive behaviors, an inability to trust or have long-lasting intimate relationships, disordered eating, lack of trust in authority figures, and paralyzing self-doubt. All of these issues have had consequences on my career, my self-worth, and my relationships. Through the sexual and psychological abuse that I suffered at UNCSA, I am broken, and I have been for decades.
Thank you. And now we are going to hear from our wonderful co-counsel in North Carolina, Lisa Lanier.
Hi, thank you. As Gloria said, my name is Lisa Lanier. I'd like to start off by introducing my colleagues, Don Higley and Bobby Jenkins. The three of us working with Gloria and her team, we're the boots on the ground here in North Carolina. In this case, and in many cases involving the Safe Child Act. As Gloria mentioned, the Safe Child Act is an important piece of legislation, but North Carolina was not the first state to pass this type of legislation. In fact, there are 33 states that have either passed similar legislation or have it pending. All of these states, including North Carolina, look to do two important things with this type of legislation, both involving extending time. One is that they extend the statute of limitations to a later age. The other, which is important to this case, as Gloria mentioned, is this look back provision. The reason the extension of time is important in these cases is that study after study have shown that victims of childhood sexual abuse take decades to deal with the trauma to a level to be able to even speak about it, let alone seek legal help. And so these extensions of time are important. And in this situation, as Gloria mentioned, the number one takeaway, I think, from this is that that window of time, that look back period, it's closing. It's closing December 31st of this year. So it's very important that folks who have experienced childhood sexual abuse, regardless of your age, seek help before December 31st. The other important takeaway from this is that we want to hear from witnesses about this case, about the allegations that Gloria mentioned against the North Carolina School of the Arts. We have already heard from teachers, from former students, from administrators and staff. We want to hear from others. We want to uncover every piece of information that we can about these terrible allegations. And we've made it easy for you to contact us if you have information. You can go to our website, lanierlawgroup.com, and we have a page dedicated to this case and a direct line to this team, Don, Bobby, and myself. You can also email Gloria directly. Her email address is gallred@amglaw.com. If you have information about this case, we urge you to reach out to one of us. As Gloria mentioned, we have filed these lawsuits as class action lawsuits. We're seeking certification under North Carolina Rule of Civil Procedure 23 because of the numerosity of claims. We've already heard from many other victims. These are victims not just from the dance department, and these are victims across decades. So we urge any information to call us, to email us, to visit our website. We want to help. We want to help these wonderful victims who've come forward. We are all grateful and honored to work with these courageous victims who asked to tell their story and speak to you today, because they're seeking justice, not just for themselves, but they're attempting to make sure that reform takes place so that the horrible acts that were committed against them are not repeated. Gloria, you want to get some questions from press?
Yes. And if you would like to ask questions, the victims or, the clients will not, who are victims, are not going to be answering any questions today, but the lawyers will be happy to answer questions. Would you please hit the Q&A button if you have a question? At that point, I will be able to read your question, and then everyone will be able to answer. That is, any of the lawyers will be able to respond if they feel able to do so. And they will unmute their buttons when they answer the question. So again, if there are questions, just All right. Here's the first question. And again, feel free to keep pushing the Q&A to put your questions up there. First question from Sarah Coella is, should the case be certified as a class action, will other survivors be able to join in even after December 31st? Lisa, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. So Sarah, that's a great question. The purpose in requesting certification is obviously, as I mentioned in the rule, to consolidate a numerosity of claims where there are lots of claims too numerous to have each claim individually heard before the court. It makes sense. We are never guaranteed class certification in any case, but certainly we have a good faith belief and will make every effort to try to get this certified as a class, because there are a number of victims coming forward. And Bobby, do you want to chime in a little bit on class certification process?
Well, yes, and as I understand the question, and we researched this and we consulted with some other attorneys about this before we filed the case and it's our understanding that class certification would toll the statute of limitations on anyone who comes into the case even after December 31st. We are hoping through processes like this and otherwise that people will come forward, but part of our obligation as pursuing the class action and representing our clients will be to notify the potential members of the class, other potential victims, about the lawsuit, about our class action, and about their ability to be involved. And we will be able, through the lawsuits, to get former student roles from UNCSA and initiate that notice process.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. And I do want to add that out of an abundance of caution, any adult victim of child sexual abuse in North Carolina, or where the incident of sexual abuse or incidents occurred in North Carolina, should, seek the advice of a private attorney prior to December 31st, 2021, just to be sure that they can still assert their rights if they wish to do so. But I agree with what Bobby and Lisa said in reference to it is potentially possible to assert rights after December 31st if a person is part of a class action. But rather than relying on that possibility to be very protective of your rights, it would be better to contact lawyers prior to December 31st this year. Next question is, how soon do you expect an answer as to whether this will be certified as a class action? That's from M. Hewlett. Lisa, Bobby, or Don, if you would like to answer that question, feel free to jump in. Unmute.
I would expect it would be several months at a minimum. Again, we do have the process of notifying potential class members who are in the industrial commission filing. One of those cases is also filed as a class action, and that is a bit of new ground. We haven't found a class action filed in the industrial commission before, so there may be some procedural things that have to be sorted out. But Lisa, Don, I would expect it to be several months before we know the ultimate status of the class action.
Thank you. Next question is, what's next if you get this certified as a class action? What's the next step in the process?
Don, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, sure. I could take that one. The
Okay.
the way that the class action system would work is that you would enter into a discovery period in which you would be compiling the various potential victims. And then at that point, they would all get notice that this class action exists, and then get an opportunity to opt in or out of the class. But I would simply add that what Gloria said is absolutely true, that if someone is listening out there, they should not be relying on joining a class action down the line. There will be a significant amount of litigation, and if you are out there, I hope that you'll be able to come forward before then.
Okay, so the next question, let's see, is not one that we're going to be able to answer, but I will read it anyway because it's from Sarah. And it says, how many witnesses have you been able to interview so far? And we would prefer not to reveal that, but of course we always do our due diligence and will interview any and all witnesses who have or will contact us. The next question is, have you received any allegations of sexual abuse from the 2000s at UNCSA? Lisa?
I have not seen any allegations coming out of the 2000s.
Thank you. Next question is, I'm not sure if we've answered this or not, so I'll say it again. Grace Holland from WFMY News 2. What's next if it's not certified as a class action?
If not certified as a class action, then the 7 individual lawsuits in the Industrial Commission would go forward, as well as the state court claim against the former, individually against the former administrators and the state constitutional claim. So if the class action was not ultimately certified, the cases still go forward on behalf of our current clients.
Thank you. We're going to take one last question, and that's from Sarah Coelho. We're not going to be able to answer this question, but I do want to read your question. And that is, how would you characterize your conversations so far with the school? And can you confirm that they were offered an opportunity to negotiate last month? We have no comment on that. So we thank everybody for attending our press conference today. And we look forward to seeking justice for our clients. Thank you all. Bye-bye.